Now let's bring in Senior News Corp writer Patrick Carlyon for his take on this issue. How do you see it, Patrick? The choice was between Angus Taylor, Sussan Ley. Is this the rebirth of the Liberal Party?
Well, we'll have to wait and see, Rita. Look, she's got the hardest job in politics at the moment. She's going to seek to unite a party that managed to alienate so many different parts of the community only a couple of weeks ago with the election. The Liberal Party doesn't know what it is, what it's trying to be, and what it wants to be. And this rebuild, if you want to call it that, is going to take months, if not years. She's going to be in charge. She's traditionally a moderate. You talk about backflipping, but the party managed to put off so many sections of the community. What she has to try and do is sort of present a party that listens to Australia and actually is aware of what Australians care about in a way that it plainly did not coming into 2025. So she's got a really tough job.
She certainly does, and that job may be even tougher if the moderate Sussan Ley as Liberal leader sees a split with the National Coalition, because the issue of energy is going to be crucial if the National Party walk away from their net zero commitments. That is going to be quite a rift in the coalition. Certainly if Matt Canavan was elevated to leader, that would be happening. Yes. But even David Littleproud has indicated that he is not interested in this renewables only position. He just does not see it as sustainable, and it's not going to power Australia.
Look, I think the timing on this is probably helpful for somebody like Sussan Ley in this position. In the net zero 2050 question has sort of got muddled in the last few years by rising power prices and by growing recognition, I think, that the renewables dream is unachievable without fossil fuels. And I mean, you've got all these sort of arguments going on about gas and whether we should be using more gas because it will, shut down on more coal power stations sooner. You've got all these little arguments within arguments. I don't think the 2050 question is sort of front of centre for a lot of Australians at the moment.
It isn't, but we are going to see Labor be even bolder in their emission targets. Yes. There's a huge push from within Labor. The very powerful climate lobby groups within Labor are wanting to see them take a bolder position, really utilise this enormous election landslide.
Yes.
Can energy be the debate point between the two parties? Because we had just an election where many people wondered what the difference was between the two parties. Could it be energy?
Look, Ted O'Brien, who was Sussan Ley's deputy, he was the nuclear guy for the Liberal Party.
But he hardly said a word about nuclear throughout the campaign. They were so terrified.
Yes, it fell apart. That whole sort of notion of nuclear as an alternative really did fall by the wayside, didn't it, throughout? Look, I think power bills are the big question here. Are they going to keep going up? Is it going to be because of renewable energy targets that are unachievable? Look, the hip pocket drives a lot more in terms of voter sentiment than does saving the world, the abstraction of saving the world, I think. And certainly those power prices are really hurting people. And I think how those come down will have a huge bearing on targets and, thoughts.
But that argument really, probably because we don't have a coalition government that is strong enough to make these arguments, and I've argued if they actually went to the election campaign, made it a referendum about energy policy, they would have done a lot better. But people aren't connecting the spend on renewables with the increase in their energy bills, because they keep hearing this nonsense about renewables are the cheapest form of energy.
Yes.
So many think if you invest more in renewables, your bills will be lower, despite the experience. Now, today, the new Labor ministry was officially sworn into office, and Anthony Albanese has demoted factional rival Tanya Plibersek, sending her down the ladder from Environment Minister to Social Services Minister. He promoted a close ally, Senator Murray Watt, to Plibersek's former position in order to finalise Labor's so-called nature positive reforms. And we've also got a decision on the $34 billion Northwest Shelf gas project happening. Patrick, what do you make of this cabinet? It looks strong. It's people who are experience. He's got a lot of people very loyal to him. It seems like it's going to be a very disciplined outfit.
Look, Murray Watt's got some challenges walking into that environment role. He's got to make a decision on the northwest shelf I think in the next few weeks. And that's a massive one. Whatever he decides on that and whatever the government goes with is going to upset a lot of people because it is so pitched, that battle. Look, it's not surprising that Tanya Plibersek was one of the big losers, if you like, of the election in an internal sense. She's been demoted. And I think, look, Albo at the moment is in a position where he can promote and demote as he sees fit. He has such a mandate given the election result. It'll be interesting to see how those ministers go. But it was all about factional wrangling and all the rest, which I find, it's not necessarily merit-based, which I find disappointing. I mean, these people are very important, that you should have the best person in each of the best jobs.
Well, talking about merit, there's now talk of quotas being introduced for the Liberals. Certainly, Sussan Ley in the past has promoted quotas, gender quotas. It's funny to me, Patrick, we never talk about other quotas. If we really want to have a parliament that's representative of the community, you can't just stop at gender quotas. You would have to have all sorts of other categories. I mean, we've got, 1.4 million Chinese Australians. They're certainly not reflected in the parliament, and every other ethnicity and minority group.
Look, I think the Liberals have a massive issue with women at the moment, putting aside quotas. I don't know any woman under the age of 40 who voted Liberal, to be honest. They did not appeal on any level. That is a big problem for the Liberal Party.
But is electing through a quota system females going to...
I don't think quotas are the way to go, but it did not feel like a party that represented women's best interests, especially with the work from home stuff early on in that campaign. They alienated working mums, working women in a way that really cost them deeply. So I don't think quotas are the answer. I agree with you on that. But they do need to be seen to be making moves towards appealing to women.
I don't know. I think women will... will gravitate towards strong policies like men do. Maybe not in the same numbers of men, but you actually give them something to vote for, as we saw with The Voice. They will back you. Now let's go to the UK briefly, where Labor Party there has done a massive U-turn on a number of issues, including the country's open borders approach. It seems that the threat from Nigel Farage's Reform Party has British Prime Minister Keir Starmer talking like Donald Trump. Look at what he posted on X here. He said, if you want to live in the UK, you should speak English. That's common sense. So he's insisting on raising English language requirements. And he also posted this. He said, the Tories lost control of our borders and let net migration soar to record levels, undercutting hardworking Brits. I won't stand for it. I promised to restore control and cut migration, and I'm delivering with tough new measures. British workers, I've got your back. Patrick, this is quite astonishing. You got the Labor leader in the UK, someone who was seen as far left by many. He seems to be more conservative, more right-wing than the Liberal leader in Australia right now.
Well, look, as he was posting those, I think the Sun newspaper in London was reporting that 500 people had crossed the English Channel that day, as he was actually talking tough. And I think there's been 12,000 people cross the English Channel in small boats this year, landing in England, seeking, refuge and a new life. It's all very well to talk tough, but it sounds very little too late, doesn't it, really?
It does, and it's a matter of whether you actually think there's any substance behind that rhetoric, because you don't feel like Labor actually believe any of this. Obviously, Reform has done brilliantly. They're doing amazingly in the polls. There was the recent local elections and by-elections where they did very well. So I think this is a reaction to that. And isn't it funny that we were told that Trumpian politics turned off Australian voters when we had a very small L Liberal policy platform? And you've got Nigel Farage embracing Trumpian politics and winning in the UK. Now, before you go, I've got an example of the far left attacking itself from within, this time involving radical feminist influencers, Clementine Ford and Abby Chatfield, who have been attacking each other on social media since late last week. Over the weekend, it all got a bit too much for Abby Chatfield.
Please stop dehumanising me. Please, you can criticise my content, you can criticise my work, just I'm begging you to stop lying about my intentions and stop saying that I have a personality disorder. You don't know me. And this is so triggering. I just want her to stop.
Now, the row stemmed from an article Ford wrote on her blog last week, lashing Chatfield for profiting from the performance of being politically engaged and presenting herself as a voice of feminism and political authority. She called her shallow and says she platformed genocide supporters. I think she's referring there to Abby Chatfield's interview with Anthony Albanese. Ford then took to other social media platforms to call Abby Chatfield fake, as well as selfish and egocentric. Patrick, I'll be covering this in more detail in Lefties Losing It. But what do you make of this meltdown? You've got leftist feminist versus leftist feminist.
Well, you've got grandstanders colliding with grandstanders, don't you? And I mean, I think that language, platforming genocide supporters, to describe...
It's a bit hyperbolic.
It sort of shows you where this debate is taking place. It's all about people who are... look, it's about... They're playing the man, I would say, but that's not the right way of putting it, instead of playing the issues. Look, they're actually fighting each other. It's sort of entertaining and quite challenging for the rest of us. We look at this and what the hell are you talking
Well,
about?
those young female voters you were talking about, that's the primary audience here. And if that's the sort of politics they're being fed, you can kind of understand their voting patterns. Patrick Carlyon, thanks for your time tonight.